that's lovely. We're going to look today at the International A-level in languages, which is French, German and Spanish, and it's Module 2, you can see. We looked at Module 1 a couple of weeks ago, and we were supposed to do Module 2 a bit earlier, but unfortunately I was not able to deliver. So apologies to people who wanted to attend earlier but couldn't. So you have got some documents in the delegate pack, but I would recommend that you have in front of you your specification, because we'll be referring to a few things on that. So anyhow, let's begin. Some of this is repeated from Module 1 in actual fact, but I'll still just mention the point of today is to understand what the assessment objectives are for this qualification. And we're going to look at the a little bit, we did last time as well, but the sort of question types and the way those question types are marked, what is important for us to know. To learn about the support provided by Pearson, it says around assessment and exemplars. There's lots of things actually there. And obviously to try and network, share ideas with other teachers. That's quite a little bit more difficult to do it online, but if you have any good tips or resources that you use, then that would be great. That's a sort of brief agenda for today. Just going through, these things are always a little bit fluid and flexible depending on what comes up. So there is some information about Pearson in general and what happens there, what we do, and you will have a copy of this PowerPoint, and you will get a recording of this event as well, so that you can have a good look at the Welcome to Pearson slide there. So to cut then to the International A-level specification, there was a report, which again we mentioned last time, about the international A-levels from Edexcel are considered to be comparable to the UK home GCE A-level standard. So in terms of university entrance, for example, then they would count as the same. They would be considered the same. Just a few features about the three languages, and I think one of the things that isn't on here is the fact that it's a module, of course, so your students can enter let's say, for example, you had some native speakers or near native speakers and they wanted to enter the speaking test for AS in January, then they could, and then they would perhaps, or November, January, then they could, and if they didn't do as well as expected, they could then resit that in the summer series, and the better of the performances would be counted, but they can resit each paper. And so just a few things there that you can read for yourself. You don't need me to say. So the overall structure then, as you know, is there are 4 units. Units 1 and 2 are for the International AS, and it is possible for students to just do the AS if that's what they want. And then if you're going to have the whole A-level, then they need to do the units 3 and 4. So sort of look at those as being, the sort of the international A2 part of it. So that's they're in parallel, the same thing. You can see that Unit 1 is speaking, Unit 3 is speaking, and the AS listening, reading, writing is again mirrored in the Unit 4. Now, you can enter your students for all 4 units in one series. You don't have to necessarily do the A2 AS units, unit 1, unit 2 in the end of the first year of the sixth form. You could in fact do it all at the same time. It's very, very flexible. So make sure you've had a good read of the specification to see those things. So we have assessment objectives, and the assessment objectives define the things that students need to do in this qualification. And we'll look at those in a minute. And there are 4 assessment objectives, and each one has a distinct focus, and that focus is then targeted in the papers and the exams. And sometimes you'll see it says here that the assessment objectives can be assessed individually, so just one assessment objective, but sometimes there will be a combination of these assessment objectives. And these are they, and they're what you would expect really, that AO1 is where the candidates have to understand and respond to spoken language, and that can be in speech and in writing. So the spoken the response to spoken language in speech would be for the speaking tests, units 1 and 3, and then responding to spoken language in writing would be for the listening papers. And you can just see then on the right-hand side that it details the percentage of the marks that are available for AO1 in the AS and then in the A2 and then overall as well. And Charlene, just to pick up on your question, we've only just started. I haven't got down to any nitty-gritty, as it were. I'm just talking in some general things. AO2 then is the students have to be able to understand and respond in speech and writing to written language. So this is then your paper 2, your for paper 4 at the A2, and you can see how that works itself out. And then there is the assessment objective, which targets their ability to use the grammar and the different structures which are detailed in the specification. So it's worthwhile sharing those structures with your students. And the thing about that is that there are 2 different things. There's actual knowledge of, so we're looking at range of structures, how many different structures from the vocabulary, not from the grammar list, are they attempting to use? But there's also then this idea of accuracy. So it's both having a go at using this variety and then trying to use them accurately. And you can see how that works. And then the final one is actually an international A2 only assessment objective, because it's testing their ability to respond critically. That's very important. We'll look at that later, to whether it be a topic, a film, or indeed a text. So those are the 4, and we must assess those every time. Every time there is a series, we must assess those, use those objectives. And that's just how they map out to the different units, the different papers. But you can look at this in the specification. There's a lot of detail about this, and what I would say is it's important because it's what we test every session. Now, in terms of the question types, we have quite a wide range of question types. There are obviously spoken questions, the ones that we use in the speaking test in the Unit 1 at AS and the Unit 3 at A2. We're going to look at those, at how that's assessed. And we have then also written comprehension questions. So these can be, there's a variety. That's a multiple choice where they have, an option of 4 different answers and they have to choose the correct one. There can be a gap fill where there's a word box for it there and they have to select. And then the one that thwarts them a little bit is the short answers in French, German, Spanish, which come up in units 2 and 4. And the thing about that, as we mentioned last time, those of you that were here, is that it comes up in the listening and in the reading, and they try to write too much. So it is short answers. It doesn't need to be in full sentences. And sometimes, writing less leads to a better outcome, and sometimes writing too much leads to quite a not such good outcome. And then we have longer written responses, which are the essays in Unit 2, the sort of 4 bullet point that they have to cover. And then the slightly more ambitious one in Unit 4, which we'll again come on to and look at. So to start then with this Unit 1 of the speaking, we have what's called a levels-based mark scheme. So it's looking at assessment criteria. And for Unit 1, this is where you might want to look at your specification. But I'm going to go on because I've actually sort of put them, I've transported them, or whatever the word is, in here. The first grid assesses only their response to the actual picture and the text that you've had on the card. So this is the sort of part 1 of the test. And you can see here that it's a mark of 4, but for them, if they have looked at that card well and thought about that card and remembered that they've got to have 3 points in the first response, 3 different pieces of information, and it must come from the first paragraph, and it should be sort of formulated in their own words, not just lifted. If they do that, then really, they can get a mark of 4. It says it's full, detailed answers to the prescribed questions, and they understand very well the stimulus and also its wider implications. The wider implications come more in questions 3 and 4. So that one, if they've thought about this quite carefully, that could be a relatively accessible 4 marks. And then we have 2 grids. I put them in the order that often works quite well. This then assesses everything that they do in Unit 1, so both the card and then the discussion. And you can see that it's this quality of language, and both grids are called quality of language. But the first one that I put there is the range of lexis. And the second one is the accuracy, and they're slightly interlinked, because if you look at a mark of, let's say, 3 for the range of lexis, you can see that it says that range is adequate. It's okay. It's not good. It's not wide. It's just adequate. And then it says that the range of structures is actually quite limited, so it could be quite repetitive. They could be using more ambitious ones, but they haven't. So when you then go and look at the quality of language accuracy, you can see that if we look at a mark of 4 there, you can see that it refers generally accurate, but some errors in more complex language. Now, if you've had, only adequate in that first grid, it's unlikely then that they are going to score 4 in this accuracy, because they haven't tried to use complex language. So you can see that there is mention in the range of lexis in the 4 and the 5 band of in those 2 bands rather, you can see that it uses the word complex. So in order for them to be able to sort of score in the 4 and 5 on the accuracy, they will have needed to show that they're able to use complex structures. What is important for a mark of 5 in terms of the accuracy is that it is highly accurate, but it isn't error-free. So we recognize in everything that we do, actually, that we make mistakes. So why would we say they've got to be error-free here? So they can, you know, if they've used a wide range of lexis and a good variety of complex structures, then you know they could quite easily get a 5 for the accuracy as well, because they've shown that they are able to use this complex language without making too many errors. And the pronunciation and intonation is authentic. Now, this, you know, this is often queried really because we don't expect them to have a perfect French, German, Spanish accent, because we recognize that that isn't possible for all people. But certainly in terms of the intonation and where the stress goes, this would be, you know, quite authentic. So those are things to sort of consider on that one. And then we have a grid which is the spontaneity and development, which carries actually quite a lot of marks, as you can see. They've got up to 16. This is all in the specification, by the way. I just thought it would be easier to pop it in the slide, but it's on page 18 of the spec if you want to read it. And so this time, if we look at the 9 to 12, you can see it says many examples of spontaneity. Now, spontaneity is where we're not having this pre-learnt question, answer, question, answer, question, answer, but rather, you know, you ask the candidate something, they respond to that, and you pick up on that in your next question. This is what we're talking about in spontaneity. And in this band of 9 to 12, there are many examples of spontaneity. So you don't get that feeling that it's just a pre-learnt question answer. That would be going into the 5 to 8, 1 to 4 band. So there's also some development of responses. So your students need to be aware then that they should not just give a bare basic answer. Obviously, they shouldn't hold a monologue, but they should be some extra information. And I think I mentioned this before about what we understand by development. You know, it's where you just give a bit of extra information. Perhaps it could be your opinion on that piece of information. So there are different ways of making sure that you have developed the response. And also, it says that they're able to respond without much hesitation. So they understand the question, and furthermore, they have done enough research to, or you know, they've done it. They've got something to say about what you've covered in your lessons. You know, they've got enough to be able to give an answer spontaneously there. And they are able, in fact, to cope with all the different questions. I suppose to a certain extent that comes back to the teacher examiner, making sure that the questions are appropriate to the candidate. Sometimes, you know, the questions might be too easy and there's nothing for the candidate to say. And on the other hand, perhaps they're too challenging, and therefore the candidate hasn't got very much to say. So that's the spontaneity and development. We're looking at this idea of it not being a pre-learned question and answer, or looking for some development, expansion of detail, ability to be able to answer the question, and then, you know, making sure there's some sort of development and making sure they sustain. Then we have a grid which refers only to the second part of the speaking test. So that this is where you have your discussion. And you can see here it says that it assesses their ability to communicate information. And they have done a lot of research here, so we expect them to be able to come up with some ideas because they've prepared these two topic areas and they're being assessed on one of them. So we're looking about their ability to give some information, that's the knowledge, and we're also assessing them on their ability to evaluate that, if you want, to give some ideas or to give some opinions. And so with these bands, and this was true in the previous band as well, sometimes you have, oops a daisy, my, oh dear, dear, my question and answer was going a bit mad and now I've lost it, but I'll come back to it. If you have, for example, if you think about 7 to 8, many relevant ideas and opinions. So yeah, they've got lots of perhaps understanding, but or demonstrating good knowledge and understanding of the general topic area. So they have got some good ideas, but in fact, their knowledge is not so good. It's usually the other way around, actually. But you can see that there are two different things. They've got to show, first of all, that they know stuff about it, and secondly, then they've got to be able to evaluate it really, or sort of be critical of it, express an opinion of it. So sometimes they're good at one thing and they're not so good on the other. And what we have to do there is to look at a best fit. And it's the same on the previous one, the spontaneity and development, because you've got quite a wide range, 9, 10, 11, 12. So you've got 4 marks there. So sometimes you have to go for this best fit. And so perhaps you feel there, well, yeah, there are quite a few ideas. Could be better, could be better. So perhaps you're going more to the 7, or you might feel that, well, actually, it's this, only relevant, only some relevant. So you have to find this best fit. It's not always a clear-cut thing. So it's perhaps a bit easier to evaluate when there is, not just one mark. Now, one of the things I wanted to remind you of, that within the mark scheme, there is what we call an indicative content, and this is an example of the indicative content. And questions 1 and 2, if you recall, question 1 is asking about the first paragraph, and question 2 is the information will be picked from the second paragraph. And for question 1, there must be 3 pieces of information. So you can see here for the indicative content for number 1, for the first question, there are 4 pieces of information. So your students don't have to give all 4 of those. If you're doing a mock exam, for example, they need to give only 3 because it's 3 pieces of information. But they have a choice here as to which pieces they give. Question 2 is always based on the second paragraph, but there isn't a limit or any number of pieces of information. Now, what's important is that this is not the only way to express this. Your students may express this in a completely different way. The idea here is that it's indicative. It's just an indication of what they could say. But it's useful to share with your students really as well, so that they can see what would be a good mark, a good response. Now, questions 3 and 4, the answer really is indicative, because these are the questions don't target any information that is in the text in the card. So really, we're looking there at what kind of answers can they come up with based on what they have learned, what they have researched. So these answers are not hard and fast. These are just an indication of what all the kinds of things they could put down. So when you're looking at this as a mark scheme, you mustn't think for 3 and 4, oh my goodness, my candidate didn't say that in question 3A, therefore I can't give any mark. You need to evaluate what the candidate said against what the question was asking, and you can easily accept things that are not written here, because they are still valid. So this is just an indicative content. Now, one of the things that you may have overlooked, I don't know, is that within the mark scheme for Unit 1, there is a page, I think it comes at the beginning, but I'm not sure, which is called Marking Guidance for Oral Examiners. And there are some quite good guidance tips there for teacher examiners as well. I talked last time about tests that are too short. So, we have this test, which is supposed to be between 8 and 10 minutes overall. We spoke about the fact that the section A is usually completed much more swiftly than the second section, but you still need to make sure that you hit the 8-minute mark. And so a test is considered to be too short if it's less than 7 minutes 30 seconds. So actually, you've got this 30-second tolerance. And important again for you is that the timing rather, will start from when the teacher reads the first question on of that card. It says here short tests. One test that is perhaps 7 minutes 29. It can't be deemed to demonstrate that all the requirements within the accuracy and the spontaneity and development band grids. So you need to think about that. And it gives you a procedure for what you do. So if you were going to give it a mark of 10 for spontaneity and development, you would then actually drop down to the corresponding mark in the band below, which would be 6. So it's really, really important actually to follow the rules on this. You need to keep to the timing and not too long, not too short, but also you can see not too long. And as I said to you last time, the tests that are too long, oh dear, the tests that are too long, the examiner will actually stop listening at the end of the next sentence or sort of sense group after 10 minutes. So that's really important to know as well, that there's no value in going over that 10-minute mark because nothing really will be assessed. So it's important the students know that and make sure that they get all their all their gems of knowledge into that 10 minutes. Then you can see there's a bit of clarification about spontaneity. It's a good idea to share this with the students, that if you want to have your students accessing a mark of 9 or above, they have to demonstrate many examples of a spontaneous response. So these, as we said before, these are genuine responses. They're not pre-learned. We know that they're going to sort of pre-learn information, but they don't know that that question is coming up exactly, and they don't just recite it verbatim. So what does many mean? Well, it implies then that overall this is clearly a spontaneous discussion. And it gives you some information which you can read for yourself there. I don't need to read it all. But you can see that it's meant to be this kind of fluent, natural discourse within the confines of an assessment. And just to clarify, which again, I think I have, that development doesn't mean that you're allowing your candidate, your student, to hold forth for 10 minutes. It is that they're able to expand a little bit on each idea, so that it isn't just a bare bones answer, but it's got some examples here. They can justify something, that's an expansion. They can give you an example, that's a as indeed is exemplification. So there are all these different ways of actually fulfilling the criteria. And you can see here for the understanding, which is the stimulus specific, that if a candidate doesn't answer question 1 appropriately, nor yet question 2 appropriately, but they are successful in their answers to questions 3 and 4, then we will do our utmost to credit the candidates understanding of the wider implications. But obviously it's best to try and get the questions 1 and 2 correct. And the understanding of the general topic area, as I said before, that's only in the discussion. You can see that they really have to show here that they have done some research and they have knowledge about their topic area. That perhaps they've got some statistics which are used to back up an idea, or this kind of thing. We don't, I'm a bit of a number phobe really, but I think we don't want them to remember things like 927,653. It's not about that. It's about saying, well, that the number has been increasing year on year, and it's reached a very high proportion now. So it's actually having those kind of responses rather than focusing on the minutiae. And if candidates are not given the opportunity to engage in the discussion, so which is a sort of second part, and this discussion doesn't move away from the main focus of the subtopic which was presented on that card, then they won't be able to score very well in this grid because they haven't been given an opportunity to show what they can bring forth. So it's important to make sure that you do go away from the slant of the card, the text on the card. And you can say that if they repeat, you can see if they repeat their ideas, or if it's rather simplistic, based on very much general knowledge that anybody would know, then that's not going to bode well for them. So they do need to show in all of these things, when they make a statement, they need to give some concrete evidence about that. So yeah, that's that. This chat box keeps going over. Sorry about that. Okay. So then it says, they must, in order to achieve this mark of 7, they have to be able to show evidence, quite a lot of evidence, really. So make sure you have a look at that on the website, on all the speaking test mark schemes, and you're perfectly welcome to share that with your students. So any advice for the students? Well, they need to know the question words. That's very important because sometimes, when they're quite nervous, they're listening, they don't listen carefully, and so perhaps they misunderstand or get confused, and so they're answering the wrong question because they haven't understood that it's who instead of where or whatever. So make sure they're solid on that. Make sure they know how to ask for the question to be repeated, because if you remember, we said that on the section A, where you've got those 4 questions on the text, that you may repeat them. You can repeat them, but you shouldn't rephrase them. So that's an important point, that they know how to ask. They can actually ask for it to be repeated. There isn't any fixed number of times that you can repeat it, but I would say that too many times is actually very worrying for a student, because they keep hearing this question and they don't know what to say. So I think that's something you would need to sort of move on from. Making sure that they have this ability to develop, to give some examples. That's a way of developing. Give some details. That could be statistics. It could be all sorts of things. And they then have to give some opinion on it, and they have to justify that, which is a reason. And as it says on the last bullet point, this facts and figures, and I come back to that point about figures, that it doesn't have to be a very specific thing. It just needs to be some figures in general terms. Okay, so that's available then for you for Unit 1 on the website. And if we now have a look at Unit 3, we've got, if you have a look in your specification, which is a good idea to have that, the mark grids actually start on page 29. And there is a mark scheme, a mark grid even, which is spontaneity and development. And we've talked about spontaneity, so we don't really need to talk about that again. There's also a mark scheme about covering the quality of language. You know, there are two of those, if you recall. One is for looking at the range of vocabulary and the range of structures that they use. And then there is a mark grid equally for the accuracy of those two things. But the ones I wanted to look at here is that there's a grid which mentions reading and research, and that covers only the debate. If you remember, they choose an issue to debate with you, and there is an expectation. You remember we said that it was there in page 26 and page 27. Actually, no, it's on page 26 only. It says there under section A debate, it says students will be assessed on the breadth and depth of their research in the presentation. As such, students should mention German, French, Spanish language, newspaper, magazine, articles, online written resources. So something that is excuse me, something that is written. They need to show that they have done some reading. They can do other research. You can see that it says that also that they can later on, you know, they can refer in the during the debate, they can refer to films and televisions and so on, television programs and that sort of thing. So we're looking here specifically at how they are evidencing that they have done this reading and research. So if you look, for example, at a mark of 4, it says good to very good evidence of wide reading. So that they, you know, they actually mention which papers, newspapers they've used, or where they found such and such an article. But these kind of things, it's, as I say, it gives you a list of things there: magazine articles, online written sources, newspaper articles, journals, literary texts, anything that is written. And so they need to show that they have read those things. And for a mark of 4, the more the merrier in terms of research, because then you know they cover that criterion, and that it's relevant, so and pertinent. So they make some very good comments based on that. So this is only 5 marks, but actually, if your students follow that rule in the specification, then they can actually you know, bag those marks. The critical analysis does what it says, really. How well do they well do they sort of look at those issues and give an evaluation of them? And so you can see a mark of 4 that they are able to analyze certain issues, you know, to give an opinion. Well, you know, this happened because and it's very sad that this did. So, it could a little times be inconsistent. So perhaps for, you know, for some aspects they've got quite a few ideas and that they can analyze, and then in other ones they haven't. And then the second bullet point is that there are justified links between ideas. So it is that they can't just express an idea, they must always justify it. And that sort of comes really through international GCSE as well. It's important that they, when they're expressing an opinion on something, that they then actually justify that. It's a common thread. So in terms of teaching your students, I think it's good to start that even before they have to consider their international GCSEs. So, excuse me. You can see then it says justified links between ideas with coherent arguments, and they can develop an individual response. So it is this ability, it assesses, it says it at the top, it assesses the student's ability to analyze the issues that they have raised there. Now, in terms of any sort of tips on Unit 3, I think the one, well, I've mentioned some of them anyway, but when they're choosing their topic or issue for debate, it has to actually be debatable. And if it's a topic that they've chosen that is actually only discussed, so they're effectively just having a discussion, it will have an impact on their marks for spontaneity and development and critical analysis, because they haven't really given themselves the opportunity to engage in a debate. So very important that they choose something that can be debated, and that you, as if you're the teacher examiner, that you make sure that they are put in a position where they have to debate and defend that sort of thing. It says also that similarly, if candidates aren't given the opportunity to demonstrate that they can debate, then it will have an impact on this, as I said, spontaneity and development and critical analysis. Also, we've mentioned this before, this reading and research, they must do that. And if they don't mention anything, then it's unlikely that they will be getting a mark of 4 or 5. So, overall one would look at or listen, to the performance, but really they do need to be mentioning target language, newspapers, magazine articles, etc. So to get a mark of 4, to get a mark of 5 is actually relatively straightforward if they've prepared themselves properly. I think those are the two main things that that I would say about that. One of the things that we mentioned last time is that if you're in the discussion, you're going to have a discussion on something from the A2 general topic areas. You will notice in the specification that the A2 specific general topic areas are all say in where has it gone now? Yes, I'm looking at a German one. It says technology in the German-speaking world. So it can't just be technology anywhere. It has to be technology in the German-speaking, French-speaking, Spanish-speaking world. So if they don't ground it in that, if you don't ask them questions that make them really sort of dig into what's happening in Germany or whatever, then they will not be able to get full marks there. So they must demonstrate that. I think those are the sort of main points, really. So it would be in response to that, be mainly in the critical analysis that they would not score so well, because they haven't been able to focus on an evaluation of the key issues in the German-speaking world, so that they failed on that point of view. So we spent a lot of time reinforcing that idea last time, and I think it's worthwhile repeating that if you're going to ask them questions on the IA2 topic areas, they must actually be focused on the target language countries or communities, anything like that. Okay, the multiple choice, I think we sort of looked at this last year. last time, but it's in French and it's also in English for those folks that don't have. So multiple choice questions rely on things like synonyms or paraphrase, and so you can see that you've got lots of things here which says passant de deux, so it's going from 2 to 4 weekly flights. So they need to understand that, but they've got they've got this word hebdomadaire, so they've got to sort of think about what that means, hebdomadaire. And so then they're going to have to come and find the word that is appropriate as a synonym to hebdomadaire. So these multiple choice questions are quite good in terms of your, your teaching as a strategy, because they rely on this synonyms, synonymous phrases, paraphrases, and so it's a good way to expand their vocabulary, really, so that they're not always using the same words, that they can come up with that. So that's how the multiple choice listing questions are devised using that. And what I would also say is you can see here that sort of 2, 2, 4, 4, and the words 2 and 4 are mentioned within the topic, within the sentence originally in the text. So there's always something that is is there to that they've got to sort out, really. Let me just see. Charlene has said, during Module 1, we could download the presentation and the documents from the resources section, but it says transfer expired this time, even if I use the link above. Oh, well, that's something that I'll have to leave to Nash, because that's not something I can do. So hopefully that will be resolved. Now, the gap filling, this is on the listening. This one, again, they have a list of words, and quite often here they're all little, but sometimes there are nouns. And sometimes they then can say, oh yes, I know that these nouns are this is requiring a noun. Although it's not a grammar exercise, they can work out that it's got to be a noun, and therefore from the text box they can pick a noun. But it's useful to think about that. In this case, it's not useful because it's there aren't any nouns, but that could be the case. But what you will notice a little bit is that they work in sort of couples. So you've got toutes les and beaucoup de. You've got souvent, rarement. So the toutes les and beaucoup de are sort of, there's a bit of a difference there, but they're quite close. And souvent and rarement are direct opposites. So again, it's working on this this principle of paraphrase or synonyms, and so that's something that your students need to be able to look at. And in the it says bon nombre de zones de l'hexagone. So if it's actually transforming a good number. So what's something else which is a good number? So they have to then make a connection based on that. So answering these comprehension questions, and I don't know why that's there, because really it's about advice for students on multiple choice and gap fill. And particularly then with the reading, they have they have to sort of organize their time themselves. They have control over their listening. And so from that point of view, it's important that they have a few rules or a few tips, if you want. And I think we said this before, it's important that they listen to the entire recording. It's also important that they, or if it's a reading, that they listen, they read the text, so that they've got an understanding. And given that the answers or the questions always go in the order of the text, it's a good strategy to listen to the whole text and think, well, actually, the answer to question 2 is sort of in that particular bit there. I can see that. And it says don't jump to conclusions. Now, the thing about that is that they can write notes. They can listen to it as many times as they want. They can write notes. There's no problem with that. So I think those are quite a useful couple of tips there. It says, Adela, you say, are we going to have a Q&A after your presentation? You can just ask your questions now, Adela. You just put them in the question box there, in the chat box, and I will answer them if I can. You don't have to wait until the end. And it's very likely that if you've got some questions, then other people will have the same questions too. So, oh dear, I just, okay. Now, about these mark schemes, you can see that if it's a multiple choice, there's only one answer, isn't it? And there's no leeway on this first mark scheme, because it's either C or it's wrong. So that's the way it is. Now, for question 3, this is where they would have taken words from the word box. Sometimes there is some leeway, so it's always good to refer back to the mark scheme, because it may well be that they've made a spelling mistake, and that's okay, because it's very clear which word it is. It's not a question of can they copy correctly. It's a question of have they located the correct word for that particular gap. So you may find there that I'll talk about later about something called results plus, but you may look at one of your candidates' responses on results plus, and you can see that they have perhaps misspelt it. Or they've missed a letter out or whatever, but it's very clear in that case, and we're not there to test their writing. We are there to test whether they've understood the question. Now, let me just pick up these questions then from Adela. She says, do the students with extra time get more time for their preparation? If a student normally has a scribe, will they be able to have a scribe for the preparation too? Now, I, in fact, do not know the answers to those 2 questions. What I would suggest you do is that you ask your exams secretary, because that would be something that they could find out quite easily, and they may well know that. So I don't want to say to you, oh, no, or, oh, yes, of course, because I really don't know. So that within each centre, you must have somebody who is responsible for the entries and so on and so forth of the exams. And so I would ask them about that. It depends, there are sort of lots of reasons why students have extra time. So I can imagine that it might depend on what the concession is for. So I would, I think you should just ask your exam secretary. Okay, so then these short answer listening questions, and I don't know, it's just something that students love, is writing lots and lots. And you can see that it says you've got to answer these questions in Spanish as far as possible, using your own words. So that means it's more challenging in listening. It's more attractive to students in reading, lifting stuff, lifting words and sentences from the text. Now, the thing about that is that we recognize that sometimes it's impossible not to lift something, because there isn't any other way of saying it. But the lift should always be what we call a targeted lift. So it's just the piece, just the actual piece that has been taken from the text to to answer the question. So they can, it says using your own words as much as possible, but we're not saying they can't use words from the text. And then it's really important again that it says there that it's not necessary to write in full sentences. And I've said, in this is a listening question, and the reading, it will be a reading question. But we don't assess the quality of their grammar. But sometimes when they're writing too much, when they are writing full sentences, or when they're lifting, they do make grammatical mistakes which impede the communication. So, perhaps if the in the text it's in the first person format and they just lift it, whereas the question is actually in the third person, then they haven't really addressed the question. So they need to be aware of that, and this not writing complete sentences can actually obviate that to a certain extent, because they're just picking the exact bit that is needed there. Okay, so this one, as you can see, is taken from a Spanish one, and what I also mentioned last time, but I'll repeat for those who weren't here, is when you have a question that has got two marks. So he's got two things that are worrying him. They should put one doubt on the first line and the second doubt on the second line. So it should be clearly distinct, and not sort of let it run into one another. And we use a system called the order of elements. So if they put two pieces of information on line one, those two pieces of information will be taken as the response. So if the first piece is correct but the second piece is not, then they would get just one mark. And sometimes what happens is they do that, and then on line two they put something which is actually would have been correct. But we can't do that. We can't give them the mark for that, because we must use this order of elements. The first two things they write, excuse me, the first two things that they write, those are the things that we will take as their response. So it's very important. I would say keep for your students to keep it quite straightforward, not to try and write big sentences. They can select stuff from the text, but it shouldn't be big chunks just lifted with somewhere in the middle is the correct response. They need to focus on the exact bit. And just make sure that you have one line equals one piece of information. What is also important is that in the mark grids for this, in the mark schemes for this, you will see that there is it's set out like this. It's an answer, and then there's accept, reject, and in the answer column, that is the ideal answer. That's really what, when the person was setting that paper, that was what they would like to have seen. But you can see under 4F that there is something which is an accept. It's not one of the ideal answers or one of the targeted answers, but actually it is correct. And then I'm just going to move it on, because there's a better example here in French. You can see that there are it's this answer that is the one that we were looking for, but there are also accept answers, and then there are some that are just not right, so they will go in the reject column. So when you are marking your students' work, it's really important for you to look at this answer and accept, to find out what the actual focus of the answer is, and there are many different ways of saying that. So these mark schemes are never ever finite. They are always there could always be different ways of saying it. There could be different words there that could appear because as many students as enter the exam, that there will be that many variants. So you will often see this, and you know, when you mark it, you can afford to sort of judge whether, oh yes, that would gain the mark actually. And we tend to be yeah, we sort of go with the candidate quite often, but it's obviously got to mean the same. It must mean the same as was on the original answer. I mean, that answer is, as I said to you before, is the perfect answer that we were aiming for. So you'll see that in all of the the languages. Okay, I don't think we have any queries, so I'll just go on to the next one. And this is a bit of advice for answering these short answer questions. And I think I've covered them all. I don't think there's anything there. Just to repeat on the last point that when it says check what you've written, make sure the language is as accurate as possible. It's to make sure really that it has communicated. I mean, sometimes, as I said before, the wrong pronoun or whatever can change the meaning. So it's to what extent have they managed to be accurate. Now, answering the essay questions, some advice for students. And the first point there is very interesting because they rarely, if ever, write a plan. And I think that's can be a mistake for some students. You know, they sort of kind of leap straight in. So for Unit 2, there are 4 bullet points that they have to address. And it's important. I think it's useful to say to the students, you know, these bullet points are best answered in the order in which they come. You don't need to sort of whiz pop the order around. Just leave it as it is. And the other thing you must do is answer every bullet point. So it doesn't have necessarily to be, oh, you know, this is first paragraph, this is second paragraph, etc. But what you do have to do is make sure that everything is in fact covered. And a good way of doing that is to write a plan, which doesn't mean to say that it's a draft, a full draft, but to get some ideas down and to make sure that they've got some vocabulary there, for example. And the thing to remember about Unit 4, which is always a tricky one, is that there are 2 things really that are being assessed here. One of them is actually do they know the text? Do they know the film or the topic? Have they done some research? Have they learnt stuff about it? So they're able to show a knowledge. The one where they really struggle is this ability to evaluate, to respond critically, and we talked about this before, about this idea of analyzing, or you know, to what extent, and so they do need to respond critically. So they must always do these 2 things, and I would say, you know, students find it very hard to do that. So practice could make perfect, and there are some quite a few, in fact, sample materials on the website for you to share with your students. So this is, for example, let me just check. I can't remember now if this is Unit 4, content and communication. I think that might be the Unit 2. Just have a little look at that and see. Let me just find out, make sure it's the right one. Yes, there we are. Is it? No. It's Unit 4. I do beg your pardon. So if I find that unit, I'm just going to go through. There we are. It's content and communication. So we're looking at if you look at the first line of each of the grid, it's to do with the factual knowledge. To what extent have they shown that whether it's the topic, whether it's the film, whether it's the literary text, they've shown a good factual knowledge. So the content is quite good, and they've also been able to use some stuff from the text or the film, whatever, to support. Sometimes we get asked about quotes, and well, there isn't any hard and fast rule. Certainly, a quote is a way of substantiating your statement, but a lot of students never write a quote. They just, they just use the information from the text or the film or whatever to do that, and it gives you some depth as well. So it's better, there to choose. Because you've got a limited word count, of course. So it's better to choose fewer points and do them in more detail. So, that's good factual knowledge. You've got to make sure you've got good. So you don't want to limit that too much, but you do then need to give evidence from the text, and you need to show that you've got this good response. So then the critical analysis, and this is the one that causes the most problems, I would say. So you can see then that there are sort of different things going on here. So if we look at the 13 to 16, the AO4, it says that it's a critical analysis in response to the question. So what we're looking at here is, are they able to respond critically to whatever is being identified within the film, the text, or the topic? So that's a critical analysis. They are expected to to be critical about it, to say, oh, it works well because, but unfortunately, etc. So there is this critical analysis, and this I would say is the one that the students struggle with most. AO3 is really then showing them that they can, showing that the examiner that they understand how to present it in terms of paragraphing, for example, and making sure that there is a sort of a link. It's cohesive, if you want. So this idea of linking between paragraphs, that it's not just sort of one paragraph on this, then we come to the next paragraph on something else, the third paragraph on something else. So it's very much like that it's quite cohesive and whole. And there should be some conclusive remarks which are linked to the essay. So this is talking about the conclusion at the end. You should have this sort of summative view at the end. And this conclusive remarks, they don't need to go on forever. It should just be reflecting back on what you've written and establishing what what you think is happening here, what you feel about it, and that they can be substantiated by what you've written in your essay. It's not it's not the time to start talking about something completely different. So thinking about how they have answered the question, showing that they know the text well, showing that they or the film or whatever, and also showing that they can analyze it critically. They can think about the strengths and the weaknesses and why, and so not starting anything new, but bringing those together and establishing what their feelings are about it, or what it is, or what one can see this or something. So, but you can see there it says an individual response. So they shouldn't be worried about giving this individual response. So that's one that they find actually quite tricky, really, to cover. So let me just see. Oh, I'll come back to those in a minute because I just finished up here. Okay. Now, the other thing then that there is for Unit 4, as with Unit 1, is there is an indicative content. And this is an example which has been transcribed in English, but it's from a French one. And you can see, we mentioned this before, about describe the places where Catherine and Jules live in Austria. So that's your sort of factual bit, if you want. And then it says evaluate the impact of this place on the two characters. So you've got to get, that's the sort of the content, and then you've got the more the critical analysis. And then that you have here in every mark scheme, you always have an indicative content, and it's got this is just a small wee extract of it. But if you go back through the mark schemes, you will find loads and loads of these indicative contents for each of these text, films, topics. And I think it's good to share those sometimes with the students. Perhaps they write, they write the essay, and then you go through it and show them this indicative content, and then perhaps get them to redo it. And it is it's a very tricky one, this, but there's lots of material there to give them some clues. And it is indicative. That means it's not, they don't have to say that. Anything that answers the question is valid. So those are things to sort of bear in mind. Oopsie daisy. So there's plenty of stuff on the website for you to have a look at in terms of marked work. The commentaries and stuff are all there. I'm just going to have a look at some comments here. So Adela, let me see. So Adela, when you say showing knowledge, does it have to be from the target language world, e.g. Spain, Argentina? Well, it comes back to in Unit 1, it doesn't have to, no. I mean, I think you would, well, it'd be good to do that because you've been studying the language, and so it's good to show that based in the target language country. But they could, you could have an approach where they did perhaps some comparison between different countries, for example. And then in the second section of Unit 1, when the teacher asks them questions about another sub-theme from the same general topic, do we have to ask questions from the other 3 sub-themes, or can we focus on another sub-theme? No, you don't have to cover everything. So, if you see family relationships, peer pressure, and blah blah, there are 4. It depends on what your student has got to say. But I think you don't have to cover them all at all. Then you just see how it goes. I mean, I think it's a good idea to cover a couple myself, just for them to be able to show a range of knowledge, a range of vocabulary, range of structures. But that's sort of more up to you. But there's nothing wrong with using the target language world there. And Claire has asked, in the writing and the reading, how much does the spelling count if it's phonetically correct or just miss some accents? Well, for the reading, one is very tolerant. It would depend, obviously, on what was there, but in the writing, it's actually the writing that is being tested. So the quality of their writing and how accurate it is. So I think there you would expect it to be correct. And sometimes, it depends what the spelling is. Sometimes it can just be they've missed one letter out or something. So everything is very individualized in that sense, but it's difficult to say a one thing for all. But in general terms, for the reading, we are looking at successful communication of the correct response. And if that it were misspelt, but it was still communicated, then that would actually be fine. In the writing, it's a bit more difficult because we are actually assessing the quality of their language. I hope that's answered that question. So this is quite a short event today. But any questions, just, just keep them coming. Just going to talk a little bit about support. Um, and there's this grid, which some of you have already seen. So there are lots of things on here that you might be interested in. What's that there? How to see in Unit 2? Sorry, I'm just looking at Adela's question again. In Unit 2, do they lose a certain number of marks if they don't cover all the bullet points? Yes, they do. It's worthwhile looking at the mark scheme for that, and it will tell you, if they miss out one bullet point, they can only achieve such and such. If they miss 2 bullet points, then they can only achieve this. So it's very important that they cover all 4 bullet points. They don't have to cover them evenly. I would recommend that they cover them in the order that they're given, but they must address all of them. And if they don't, then there will be some penalty, if we want to call it that. Okay, so keep any questions coming. That's fine. I'm just going to sort of go on with this. This is then a list of resources. I know we've had some queries about the exam wizard, and I would sort of have a look at that really. Some people have said they can access it. Some people have said they can't. What it is actually is the exam wizard is where if you were thinking of doing some reading practice on a specific theme, you can type in your theme and it will extract from past papers all the reading material on that particular topic. I'll come to something shortly where to tell you, excuse me, tell you where you can address your query about that. So there is a subject advisor. I'm going to come on to that in a minute. There are schemes of work. I'm sure you've seen them. I'm sure you've seen most of these things, but I just wanted to mention a couple of them. There is here something called Results Plus, the penultimate. I don't know if you are aware of this, familiar with it, but Results Plus, you should have access to that. If you are a Pearson Edexcel Centre, you should have access to that, and your exam secretary can give you access to it. And on there, you can see all sorts of things. You can see how, the performance of each candidate across the papers, and it comes very quickly. Even, for example, you can see their performance across the speaking test. The marks are inputted there manually, although that is not marked electronically in the sense of by a computer there. It's marked by a person, obviously. But there are lots of things there, lots of sample material for you to share with your students, sample oral, sample this is and that. Oops, a daisy, I've gone the wrong way. So have a look at all of those things, and the free resources such as I'm sure you know where your paper, where your qualification is, but I would say one of the things that people quite often don't do is look at the whole page. There's a lot of stuff going on lower down, so have a look at that and see to what extent. I'll come back on to that in a minute. So this is a bit of information about Results Plus, and as I said, it's very easy to gain access to it. It gives you schools can sign up, and it is usually then done via the exam secretary. So have a look at that. And there you can see, and this comes up very quickly when the results come out, and it comes up very, very quickly, and you can decide whether you think it's worthwhile having a remark or whatever. And this is the information about the exam wizard, which some people say they can't, and I've just explained how that works. Then access to scripts, they can do that very quickly online. So if you haven't done that, again, you would need to contact your exam secretary to be allowed to use this. The Pearson publishing, these are not textbooks, and I know that textbooks are a bit of an issue there, but these are what it says. It's a resource pack. So there are these resource packs, and you know then you can you use them with your students. They are not free of charge. You have to buy them. I mean, you don't have to buy them at all. That's you know if you wanted to buy them, then you would need to pay for them. Um, yeah, Adela, just picking it up, it is in the mark scheme. Yes, it is, and you're quite right. It isn't in the specification, but that's why it's you know it's really important to have a look at the website really thoroughly and have a look at the you know the mark schemes on for if you do the international GCSE as well. It's useful to have a look at those. And Astrid, yes, I mean, you're saying it's not available for modern foreign languages at A level, which is what some people have said. Perhaps people are able to access it for international GCSE. Something that, you know, you can raise, and I'll give you a clue. So we have this subject advisor, very useful. And you could send, if you feel that the exam wizard was something that you would you use and you think it would be something good for you, then you can ask her why it's not available for international A level. So this subject advisor, if you go on to the your language page and you scroll down, you'll see her details. And this here you've got an email address, and you can send an email, and the reply will come. I don't know, within 48 hours. And so you can ask really anything to do with the specification. Then there's a phone number, but that's for international schools, that's perhaps a bit tricky. But what you have got is, and this, if you go onto your language page, this book a Teams meeting with your subject advisor, that is actually clickable on, you know, you can click on it, and do exactly that you can book a meeting with the subject advisor to discuss whatever it is that you want to discuss. So that would say, you know, that would be actually quite a good thing. Then she sends out subject advisor updates every now and then. I don't know, so it depends on when. Sometimes they come out more frequently and sometimes less frequently, but it's worthwhile signing up for them because there can be some quite interesting things. And there is a Facebook page, if you're interested in that, where you can write comments, where you can ask queries, all that sort of thing. So it's all part of the support. And as it says there in the final paragraph, that the subject advisor should be the first line of contact for you, because there is a wealth of material there. How can we get past papers? Samuel has asked, well, what I would suggest you do most of all, well, okay, I'll backtrack. So if you go onto your language page, say you were doing French, international A level, you can actually find all of those papers. I think it probably goes back to 2019 or 2018, something like that. They should all be there still. But the other way you can find them is to go onto the if you go onto the website, just the you know Pearson qualifications, you can actually in the top. There's like a magnifying glass where you can search, and if you just put past papers, it will bring up lots of past papers, because there are. You obviously have to put the subject. So if you were teaching French, you could put A-level French, and it would bring up, you know, past papers that were called A-level, international A-level, whatever. So that's really how you find them. So there we are. I think that's about all I have to say. If anybody has got any questions, I shall be here for a short wee while longer. But I hope I've dealt with your queries, and I hope that things are clearer than they were before we started. As I said, it's quite a short session, but what I would recommend you doing is having a look at these sample materials from on the website, and you can share those with your students. That's not a problem at all. Okay, so thank you very much for attending, and I hope that you have a nice day. So thank you very much. So, oh, here we are. Charlene says, could we have examples of debate questions we could use for Unit 3? Again, there isn't a set list. What you could do is have a look at these sample ones on the website. So these orals, and the sample orals, and see the kinds of questions that go well. That there isn't any that that at the moment hasn't been thought about really, because one doesn't want to prescribe. I can forward that though, but or you can send a message to your to the subject advisor about that as well. Okay. Anything else? Yes, we've got two more messages. Okay, yeah, thank you so much. Everybody have a nice day now.